J'ai vécu ça un peu comme un tremblement de terre. J'ai vécu ça comme un monde qui finissait. Tous les employés qui étaient là, maintenant, sont démunis.
What I saw, this was from my experience, the decisions were largely financially driven. The board was run by bankers.
Pour nous, rendu à 2010, très suspect. Les alarmes qui sonnaient, tous les indices suggéraient que cette compagnie s'enligne pour l'insolvabilité.
Did the company fail the retirees? It's just an awful question.
The final blow came in January when the last Sears stores closed down. It left thousands of employees and retirees worried about their pensions.
Tu as travaillé pour ça. On t'a des fois pas augmenté parce que tu as mis une part dans ton fonds de pension. Puis quand on te le retire, moi je trouve que c'est une forme de bonne.
For years, Sears retirees saw their pension fund's deficit grow. At the same time, Sears shareholders pocketed billions.
La liquidité était là. L'argent était là. Personne n'a pris la décision de s'adresser au déficit.
They did everything to save their pensions, but in the end, everyone let them down.
Jamais je n'aurais cru qu'on en viendrait à ça.
Who would have thought that after 65 years, the retail giant would fold? With its famous catalog and technological prowess, Sears was the Amazon of the 1970s and 80s.
Malgré sa voix un peu mécanique, l'ordinateur reste toujours poli, quoi qu'on lui dise.
Thank you for shopping at Simpsons Sears.
At the time, Sears Canada was a subsidiary of the American giant Sears Roebuck.
Voici l'édifice commercial le plus haut du monde.
In the heart of Chicago, the Sears Tower symbolized the power of the company.
C'était dans l'époque où on allait travailler la première journée, puis 40 ans plus tard, on était encore avec Sears.
Larry Moore worked at Sears for over 30 years, for half that time as a vice president. In 2005, things started to change and he decided to retire. In the US, a hedge fund took control of Sears, which meant that its Canadian subsidiary now belonged to it as well. The company's new head was a multi-billionaire named Eddie Lampert.
We needed to change the culture, we needed to change our operating model.
And things began to quickly change.
La première manœuvre, appelons ça une manœuvre au Canada, a été la vente du carte de crédit.
The credit card business was the glue that bound us to our customers.
Mark Cohen was Larry's boss. He ran Sears Canada before it was sold to Lampert.
The credit card business was an enormous basis. It was a cash cow. It was consistently profitable.
The sale of the credit card business was a $2.2 billion windfall for the company. Sears paid $1.5 billion of that to its shareholders.
And rather than invest that money back into the company, as most corporations do when they make a consequential divestiture, he dividended it out to shareholders. And he's the principal shareholder.
I think retail, I think it's going to be great.
Eddie Lampert says that it was Sears Canada's board of directors that made the decision to sell the credit card business. And he says he had no authority over the board.
We've got to adapt.
But ex-CEO Mark Cohen believes that Eddie Lampert had a certain influence. He is a longtime critic of Lampert and his management style. Today, he teaches at Columbia University and is an expert in the retail business.
This began a trail of asset sales which began to increasingly encumber the businesses, paralyze the businesses, kill the businesses.
Years of relentless cost cutting meant that Sears went from being one of the country's biggest retailers to a shadow of its former self. Investments needed to keep the stores in good working order fell drastically.
Les conditions des magasins dans les dernières années j'étais gêné de voir ces magasins-là.
J'ai vu le déclin par les filles qui me disaient bien, que ça changeait, qu'il n'y avait plus la même marchandise. La marchandise était différente. La façon de la mise en marché changeait aussi.
Shoppers reacted badly and sales plummeted.
It was a bit of a disheartening experience.
David Zitzma specializes in turning around retail companies in trouble. He was hired as a vice president at Sears in 2012 to relaunch the brand. He didn't feel like he had the board's support.
It was hard to get the key people to look up from their computers and pay attention to what was going on. They certainly didn't project engagement in what we were trying to do.
What happened at the end of 2013 surprised many Sears managers. Rather than massively reinvesting in its stores, Sears paid out over $500 million in dividends to shareholders.
2013 was a very pivotal year. There's still so much to do. In hindsight, for that to be the year to issue big dividends, it just feels like, man, that's not consistent at all with a group that is looking to the future of this business.
The retirees saw their financial security slip away. Meanwhile, owners of Sears Canada stock were in for a windfall.
On n'a pas vu un sou de ces dividendes-là mis dans le fonds de pension. J'ai conclu que la compagnie n'avait pas l'intention de rencontrer ses obligations envers les employés.
The pension fund went into deficit.
Considérez toujours qu'un déficit de solidité, c'est une lumière rouge. Si votre employeur devait faire faillite, vous êtes dans le trou.
Michel Lisée is a retired economist.
Ce que Sears aurait dû faire, c'est profiter que ça allait encore bien pour équilibrer un peu ce qu'elle versait aux actionnaires et ce qu'elle versait au régime de retraite, puis ils auraient eu l'argent.
Between 2005 and 2013, almost $4 billion in assets were sold. $3.5 billion of that was distributed to shareholders. That's 10 times more than was paid out in the previous decade.
All he was doing was harvesting all of this cash from the business.
David Zitzma left the company disappointed.
Now I look back and I read more, and it's like, actually, this is a bit of a travesty. This is horrible, how it all played out.
The retirees now fear the worst, that the company would go bankrupt, leaving a big pension deficit and a smaller monthly income for them. They share their concerns with the Financial Services Commission of Ontario.
Ils étaient des gens responsables au point de vue de surveillance puis intervention. C'était bel et bien clair pour nous. La compagnie était techniquement parlant insolvable. Ils auront dû prendre action.
The retirees want Sears to fix its deficit, and they want the government to make sure the company acts. As the battle heats up, Eddie Lampert, the principal shareholder, recruits a former employee, Brandon Stranzel, to take over. He will be the last president of Sears Canada.
Could the company have done things differently? It's a loaded question, and you know it's a loaded question.
Stranzel will try to do the impossible, save a company on the verge of death. He's the retirees' last hope. Hamilton, Ontario, a city that was built on steel. Like his father and grandfather, Scott Duval spent most of his life in these mills.
One time they hired many people here. This was everybody's bread and butter. It was our family's life.
But it was a fragile sense of security. Duval and 20,000 former Stelco workers had to fight to save their retirement fund after it went into deficit.
That's, to us, is theft. It's our money. They shouldn't be walking away with it and using us as scapegoats of the shortfall.
Millions of defined benefit pension plans held by Canadians are at risk. For Scott Duval, history has repeated itself too many times. By 2015, Sears was in a deep financial hole and things were getting worse. Brandon Stranzel, Sears' last president, says he inherited a company in trouble. Revenues were half of what they were, and it was bleeding money fast.
The company would have died. There was no way to fund the pension and fund the company and do everything. At that point in time, you would have had to do that in the past.
In the past, Sears took advantage of relief measures offered by the Ontario government and did not fully fund the pension while the company was profitable. Those measures were meant to help companies dealing with the 2008 crisis, and it allowed Sears to defer payments to its pension fund.
We always followed all the rules and we made sure everything was done by the books.
Tout indique que Sears a versé ce que la loi exigeait. Le problème, c'est que la loi demandait pas assez.
The board of directors had to balance opposing interests, those of shareholders against those of retirees.
Elle a certainement violé le contrat moral entre elle et les employés, mais ce qu'elle a fait est parfaitement légal. C'est un peu comme certaines formes d'évitement fiscal. C'est parfaitement légal et parfaitement immoral.
Diane Urquhart is an independent financial analyst. She goes even further.
I would say definitely, first and foremost, it's Sears, because Sears is the sponsor of the defined benefit pension plan, and they have a fiduciary duty, and the directors have a duty of care within common law in Canada.
But it wasn't just Sears that could have done more. For 2.5 years, the Sears Retirees Group tried relentlessly to get the Ontario government to intervene.
On a eu 15, 20, 25 interventions au gouvernement d'Ontario, au ministère des Finances. Le premier ministre d'Ontario a reçu des lettres. Au bout de la ligne, ils n'ont pas agi.
Diane Urquhart doesn't understand why the Ontario government didn't act.
Fisco is equally responsible, has the same level as fiduciary duty.
The Commission could have forced Sears to fill the deficit. In an email to Radio-Canada, the Commission was vague as to why it didn't intervene. They insisted that Sears followed the rules. By June 2017, Sears had few options left. The company filed for bankruptcy protection in the hopes of restructuring. But that failed, and Sears was forced to liquidate 4 months later. $16,000 retirees quickly learned that, short of a miracle, their pensions might be cut by as much as 20%.
Mais il est minime, hein? Les gens s'imaginent beaucoup, là, mais c'est quelques milliers de dollars. Alors, j'aurais envie de vous le dire, mais je ne veux pas mettre personne dans l'embarras. C'est très minime. Je ne peux pas faire mon épicerie d'une année avec ça.
The fate of the Sears retirees revives an old debate.
De plus en plus de voix s'élèvent au Canada pour demander une meilleure protection pour les travailleurs retraités lorsque leur ancien employeur fait faillite.
Canada is near the bottom of the list of advanced countries when it comes to giving its retirees priority in a bankruptcy. The banks, lawyers, accountants, investors, and the government come first.
I know the banks and investors want to make sure they're looked after, but so do we. And the government has to take a stand on it because people are just losing everything.
Holy Jesus, Paul. Holy man, oh man. Good to see you. How you been?
Scott Duval, the retired Stelco employee, is trying to fix the problem. Today, he is an NDP MP, crisscrossing the country, trying to get support for his private member's bill. The bill wants retirees to have priority in cases where employers restructure or go bankrupt.
And it puts the pensioners from the bottom of the totem pole to the top of the totem pole. That no money can be paid out if you're going to claim bankruptcy and you're going to liquidate. The pension plan has to be filled.
It's not the first time that politicians have tried to change federal rules unsuccessfully, says ex-Sears CEO Mark Cohen.
I would have thought from a distance that after the Nortel collapse, that the government would have more sensitivity to the possibility of these kind of large-scale business failures.
Diane Urquhart fought to change the law in 2010 after the Nortel bankruptcy. The changes were never adopted, due in large part to what she calls the bankruptcy industry.
There was vociferous opposition by the Canadian Bankers Association, the Insolvency Institute of Canada, and the Council of Chief Executive Officers.
L'objection que vous allez avoir des institutions financières, des employeurs, de toute l'industrie de la faillite. Écoutez, si vous faites ça, il n'y a plus personne qui va vouloir financer un employeur sur le bord de la faillite.
The banks could threaten to stop lending to companies in trouble if they are not paid back first in case of a bankruptcy. But our two experts believe that to get paid out, banks will insist that companies fill their pension funds before the banks lend them money.
L'employeur, il y aurait pression sur lui pour qu'il le comble. Au lieu de distribuer des dividendes aux actionnaires, on aimerait mieux que tu mettes de l'argent dans ton régime de retraite. Et nous, ça va réduire notre risque, on va être plus prêts à te prêter ou à te financer.
So I ask, will the Prime Minister initiate an investigation and commit to changing bankruptcy and insolvency laws to protect Canadian workers, retirees, and their families? Yes or no?
So far, the laws remain unchanged.
Mr. Speaker, of course our hearts go out to the workers affected by the decision taken by Sears.
Prime Minister Trudeau is not committing himself to supporting legislative change. If he does, he will face strong opposition from the bankruptcy lobby.
Il faut s'attendre à une levée massive de boucliers. Et ça va prendre beaucoup de colonnes au Parti libéral du Canada pour résister à cette pression-là.
Stelco retirees are still waiting to see whether their pensions will be fully secured. The company is offering to finance the plan by selling polluted industrial land.
I didn't think that we'd have to rely on having garbage to fund our pension plans. We worked hard for this. It wasn't meant to be on hope, on some land.
The Sears retirees share the same concerns for their future.
Un sentiment d'injustice, un sentiment d'avoir été trahi.
Did Sears fail its retirees? The company's last president is cautious.
I'm a very sophisticated financial mind, so I understand the arguments better than anybody else, acutely well.
But he refuses to criticize the decisions made in the past.
Is there something you'd like to say to the retirees?
You know, I mean, I worked really hard to get this company to a better place. It was exceptionally difficult. And it's disappointing for me that I was not able to bring a better outcome to you. If I sat in front of him, that's what I would say.
The principal shareholder, Eddie Lampert, wrote to us saying he always believed the company would survive. He says he is not responsible for decisions made in Canada and that he only directly benefited from a portion of the dividend.
Alors, est-ce que M. Lampert est un marchand? Est-ce qu'il est un homme de finance ou autre chose?
The court has appointed a trustee to look into some of the billions of dollars of dividends handed out to shareholders while the company was in trouble. The results of that inquiry could lead to more litigation. The Sears retirees have yet to say their final word.